He thought you'd chase him. He thought you'd text again, explain again, wait again, because you always did before. But this time you didn't fight. You didn't beg for clarity. You didn't ask for effort. You disappeared. And that silence, it hit harder than any argument ever could. Because when someone believes you'll always be there, they stop choosing you. And the moment you walked away with dignity, that's when he finally felt the loss. Chasing kills desire not because love is fragile, but because attraction is rooted in freedom, choice, and emotional balance. The moment one person starts running after another, the dynamic shifts. What was once mutual curiosity becomes pressure. What was once excitement becomes expectation. Desire cannot breathe in an environment where it is chased, monitored, or demanded. It thrives in space, in uncertainty, in the feeling that someone is choosing you, not being pulled toward you. When you chase, you unintentionally communicate that you are afraid of losing. Fear changes behavior. It makes you over-explain, overextend, and overlook things you normally wouldn't tolerate. You reply instantly, cancel plans for availability, and soften your standards just to stay connected. None of this makes you more lovable. It makes you predictable, and predictability without effort removes mystery, which is one of the core fuels of desire. Desire is sparked when two people meet as equals. Chasing breaks that balance. One person becomes the pursuer, the other the prize. The pursuer is emotionally invested, anxious, and reactive. The prize becomes passive, relaxed, and less motivated to try. Not because they are cruel, but because human nature responds to value. What feels earned is treasured. What feels guaranteed is taken for granted. The irony is that chasing often comes from a good place. It comes from care, hope, and emotional openness. But desire doesn't grow from how much you give. It grows from how safe, calm, and grounded you are within yourself. When your happiness depends on someone else's attention, the relationship stops being about connection and starts being about reassurance. And reassurance is not sexy, it's exhausting. Another reason chasing kills desire is that it removes choice. Attraction is powerful because it is voluntary. When someone feels pursued, especially when they haven't matched that energy, it can feel like an obligation. They don't get the space to miss you, to wonder about you, or to choose you freely. Instead of thinking, I want this, they start thinking, I'm being pulled into this. Desire cannot survive where autonomy is compromised. Chasing also trains people how little they need to do to keep you. When you continue showing up despite mixed signals, delayed responses, or emotional inconsistency, you send a message. Your effort is optional. Over time, the other person invests less, not more. Why would they step up when the relationship continues without them doing so? Desire fades not because they lost interest, but because nothing is required of them. There is also a deep internal cost to chasing. Each unanswered message, each one-sided effort quietly erodes your self-worth. You begin to question your value, your attractiveness, your importance. This inner instability leaks into your energy. You become tense, hyper-aware, and emotionally needy. And neediness, no matter how subtle, repels desire because it signals lack rather than abundance. The opposite of chasing is not indifference. It is self-respect. It is allowing someone the freedom to meet you where you are or not meet you at all. When you stop chasing, you reclaim your center. You respond instead of react. You observe instead of pursue. You allow silence without filling it with anxiety. This calm presence is magnetic because it shows that you are whole with or without anyone's validation. When chasing stops, something interesting happens. Either the other person rises to meet you, sensing the shift and choosing to invest, or they fade away, revealing that their interest was never deep enough to begin with. In both cases, you win. You either get a healthier dynamic or the clarity to move on without self-betrayal. Desire is not something you extract from someone. It is something that grows when two people stand firmly in their own worth and choose each other freely. Chasing kills desire because it replaces choice with pressure and confidence with fear. When you stop running after someone, you don't lose love. You make room for the kind that can actually stay. Silence creates reflection because it removes distraction, and distraction is what keeps people from facing the truth. When everything is noisy, messages, explanations, reactions, emotional outbursts, there is no space to think. Silence interrupts that noise. It forces the mind to slow down, to replay moments, to notice absence. And absence is often louder than words. When you stop speaking, stop chasing, stop filling every gap with reassurance, something shifts. The other person is no longer guided by your reactions. They no longer have your emotional presence cushioning their behavior. What remains is their own experience of the situation, unfiltered. That's when reflection begins. They start to feel what was previously numbed by constant contact, the loss of your attention, your warmth, your availability. Silence works not because it is a tactic, but because it restores reality. Words can manipulate perception. They can soften consequences, explain away behavior, or offer endless chances. Silence does none of that. It simply allows actions to stand on their own, and when someone is left alone with their actions, they are forced to interpret them honestly. That honesty can be uncomfortable, but it is necessary for growth and awareness. In relationships, constant communication often delays reflection. When you explain how you feel again and again, you give the other person relief without responsibility. They get emotional release without having to change. Silence removes that release. It doesn't attack, accuse, or demand. It just withdraws the emotional safety net, and without that net, people finally notice the weight of their choices. Silence also reintroduces uncertainty, which naturally leads to thought. When someone knows exactly where they stand at all times, there is no reason to reflect. Certainty breeds complacency. Silence breaks certainty. It raises questions. Did I misjudge them? Did I push too far? Why aren't they reaching out? These questions spark introspection in a way arguments never can. Another powerful aspect of silence is that it gives dignity to your boundaries. You are no longer trying to convince someone to care. You are showing that your presence is not unconditional in the face of disrespect or confusion. This doesn't come across as punishment, it comes across as self-respect, and self-respect has a way of forcing others to reevaluate how they treated you. Silence also allows emotions to surface naturally. When you're always available, you absorb the emotional discomfort of the situation for both people. You soothe, explain, and stabilize. When you step back, the other person has to sit with their feelings alone. That's when regret, curiosity, or longing can appear. Not because you engineered it, but because emotions need stillness to be felt. Importantly, silence creates reflection in you as well. It gives you space to hear your own thoughts instead of constantly reacting to someone else's behavior. You begin to see patterns clearly. You notice what you tolerated, what drained you, what didn't feel aligned. Reflection is not one-sided. Silence protects you from being pulled back into dynamics that require you to abandon yourself. Some people fear silence because they equate it with loss. But silence is not absence of power. It is often the return of it. It signals that you trust yourself enough to step back without panic. That calm confidence is deeply impactful. It says you are not dependent on immediate validation to feel secure. When silence is chosen consciously, not used as manipulation, it becomes a mirror. It shows people who they are when no one is compensating for them. Some will reflect and grow. Others will walk away. Both outcomes bring clarity. Silence creates reflection because it leaves nothing to hide behind. No words, no distractions, no emotional cushioning. Just truth, space, and the opportunity to finally see what really matters. Self-worth is not something you announce. It is something people feel through the way you move through the world. You can say you value yourself 1,000 times, but if your actions contradict your words, the message is lost. Real self-worth is quiet, consistent, and unmistakable because it is demonstrated through behavior, not explained through speech. Every choice you make teaches people how to treat you. When you tolerate disrespect, overextend to be liked, or stay silent when your boundaries are crossed, you are communicating your value more loudly than any affirmation ever could. Self-worth is revealed in what you allow, what you walk away from, and what you no longer negotiate. It lives in your standards and your follow-through. People often confuse self-worth with confidence or arrogance, but it is neither. It is an internal stability that guides your decisions. Someone with true self-worth does not need to dominate a room or seek constant validation. They don't chase approval or bend themselves into shapes that are easier to accept. Instead, they choose alignment over acceptance, even when it costs them connection. Action is where self-worth becomes real. Saying, "I deserve better," means nothing if you continue to stay in situations that give you less. Saying, "I respect myself," carries no weight if you keep explaining your boundaries instead of enforcing them. Self-worth shows up when you say no without guilt, when you leave without drama, and when you stop investing where effort is not returned. One of the clearest signs of self-worth is emotional restraint. This doesn't mean suppressing feelings. It means choosing when and where to express them. When you react impulsively, over-explain, or seek immediate reassurance, you hand your power to the situation. When you pause, observe, and respond intentionally, you show that your emotions are guided by self-respect, not fear. Self-worth also appears in consistency. People who value themselves don't live in emotional extremes. They don't chase intensely one moment and withdraw dramatically the next. Their energy is steady because their sense of self is not dependent on external validation. This steadiness creates trust and respect, both internally and from others. Another powerful action that reflects self-worth is the willingness to walk away from confusion. Staying in unclear dynamics often comes from hoping someone will eventually see your value, but self-worth doesn't wait to be recognized, it recognizes itself. When something feels misaligned, you don't argue with reality, you accept it and remove yourself without resentment. That choice alone communicates strength. Self-worth is also shown in how you invest your time. Time is your most limited resource, and where you place it reveals what you believe you deserve. When you constantly prioritize others at the expense of your peace, growth, or rest, you send a message to yourself first that your needs come last. Choosing yourself consistently rewires that belief. Importantly, self-worth through action does not seek to control outcomes. You don't behave well to get someone back, to be admired, or to prove a point. You act in alignment because it feels right to you. This detachment from outcome is what makes self-worth magnetic. People feel the difference between someone acting from fear and someone acting from truth. Over time, these actions compound. Each boundary kept, each situation left, each moment you choose dignity over desperation strengthens your relationship with yourself. That inner relationship becomes the foundation for every external one. You no longer ask, "Am I enough?" because your actions have already answered that question. Self-worth is not a declaration, it is a pattern of choices that protect your peace, honor your values, and reflect your standards. When your actions align with your worth, people don't need convincing, they can feel it. Walking away restores balance because imbalance is created the moment one person gives more than the other without mutual effort. Relationships are meant to feel reciprocal, not draining. When you stay in a situation where you are constantly adjusting, explaining, and compromising while the other person remains passive, the dynamic tilts. Over time, that tilt costs you your peace, your confidence, and your sense of self. Walking away is not an act of loss, it is an act of correction. When you walk away, you remove yourself from a dynamic that required you to shrink. Imbalance often forces one person to carry the emotional weight for both. You become the one initiating conversations, repairing misunderstandings, and maintaining connection. The other person grows comfortable in that imbalance because it benefits them. Your presence fills the gaps left by their effort. Walking away removes that support system, forcing the situation to either rebalance or collapse. Balance cannot exist where fear leads decisions. Staying out of fear, fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of missing potential keeps you stuck in misaligned dynamics. Walking away signals that your self-respect outweighs your fear. That shift alone re-centers your power. You are no longer negotiating your worth in hopes of being chosen. You are choosing yourself. One of the most powerful effects of walking away is that it restores clarity. When you are emotionally involved, it's easy to confuse effort with love and attachment with compatibility. Distance brings perspective. You begin to see patterns instead of excuses. You recognize how much energy you were spending to maintain something that should have been mutual. Clarity is a form of balance because it aligns your perception with reality. Walking away also changes how others relate to you. When someone realizes that access to you is not unconditional, the dynamic shifts. They are no longer interacting with someone who will stay regardless of how they behave. This doesn't guarantee they will change, but it forces honesty. Either they step up and meet you with equal effort, or they fall away. Both outcomes restore balance by removing uncertainty. Importantly, walking away restores balance within you. When you stay too long in an unbalanced situation, you begin to internalize the imbalance. You start questioning your worth, adjusting your standards, and blaming yourself for things that were never yours to carry. Leaving stops that erosion. It sends a clear message to your nervous system that you are safe, capable, and willing to protect yourself. Balance is not about control, it is about alignment. Walking away is not meant to punish or provoke. It is meant to realign your actions with your values. When your values are clear, your decisions become simpler. You no longer stay where you are confused or minimized. You no longer overextend to earn what should be freely given. This internal alignment naturally creates external balance. Another overlooked aspect of walking away is that it restores time and energy. Imbalanced relationships consume resources you could be investing in growth, joy, and connections that nourish you. When you walk away, you reclaim those resources. That reclamation feels like relief because it is. Balance feels lighter, calmer, and more grounded than constant emotional labor. Some people view walking away as giving up, but in truth, it is choosing sustainability. You cannot maintain imbalance forever without burning out. Walking away protects your future self from prolonged exhaustion and resentment. It honors the version of you that deserves mutual respect and effort. Walking away restores balance because it ends the cycle of overgiving and underreceiving. It reestablishes equality by removing yourself from dynamics that depended on your sacrifice. And in doing so, it brings you back to center, where peace, dignity, and self-respect naturally live. Disappearing isn't manipulation when it comes from self-respect rather than strategy. Manipulation is designed to control someone else's behavior. It uses silence as a weapon, withdrawal as punishment, and absence as leverage. Disappearing, when rooted in clarity, does none of that. It is not about making someone feel something. It is about protecting yourself from what no longer feels aligned. When you disappear from a situation that consistently confuses, drains, or diminishes you, you are not playing a game. You are responding honestly to reality. Staying and over-explaining often becomes the real distortion. It keeps unhealthy dynamics alive by softening their consequences. Disappearing allows truth to exist without interference. It lets actions speak for themselves. Many people feel guilty for stepping back because they've been conditioned to believe that endurance equals love. But endurance without reciprocity is self-abandonment. Choosing distance is not cruelty, it is discernment. You are not obligated to remain accessible to someone who repeatedly fails to meet you with respect, effort, or clarity. Disappearing becomes necessary when communication has already been tried. When you've expressed your needs and nothing changes, repeating yourself is not maturity, it's denial. At that point, absence becomes the only honest response left. Not to teach a lesson, but to stop teaching people that you will tolerate the same behavior indefinitely. Another reason disappearing isn't manipulation is that it doesn't demand an outcome. Manipulation seeks a reaction. It waits, watches, and measures success by how the other person responds. Disappearing rooted in self-worth doesn't do that. You step back and release attachment to what happens next. Whether someone reflects, reaches out, or fades away no longer determines your sense of value. Disappearing also restores your emotional autonomy. Constant engagement keeps you emotionally tethered to someone else's moods, decisions, and availability. When you step away, you reclaim your inner space. You stop reacting and start responding to your own needs. This shift is deeply grounding and often necessary for healing. Silence that comes from self-respect carries a different energy than silence used to provoke. It is calm, not tense. It is clean, not dramatic. There are no hidden messages or expectations attached. It simply says, I no longer participate in what costs me my peace. That clarity is felt, even if it is never spoken. Disappearing also challenges the belief that you must always be available to be valued. Availability without boundaries teaches people to take your presence for granted. Stepping back disrupts that pattern not by force, but by removing what was previously unlimited. This isn't manipulation, it's a natural consequence of valuing yourself. Importantly, disappearing doesn't erase compassion. You can care about someone and still choose distance. You can wish them well and still refuse to stay in a dynamic that harms you. Compassion without self-protection leads to resentment. Disappearing is often the most compassionate choice for both people because it ends cycles that cannot evolve. Some will misunderstand your disappearance. They may label it cold or unfair, but misunderstanding does not invalidate your decision. People who benefited from your over-availability are often the loudest when you withdraw it. That reaction is not proof you were wrong. It's proof your boundaries matter. Disappearing isn't manipulation because it doesn't try to control the narrative. It doesn't explain, justify, or persuade. It simply exits, and in that exit you honor your truth. You stop betraying yourself for the comfort of others. You choose alignment over approval. Disappearing is not about being unseen. It is about finally seeing yourself. The real win is internal because nothing external can compensate for the loss of self. You can win arguments, gain attention, or even be chosen by someone who once doubted you. But if those victories cost your peace, they are hollow. True success in any emotional situation is not measured by who comes back, who regrets their choices, or who finally sees your worth. It is measured by whether you stayed aligned with yourself. When you focus on external outcomes, your sense of value becomes fragile. It rises and falls based on someone else's behavior, interest, or approval. That kind of dependence creates anxiety because it places your emotional stability in hands you cannot control. The internal win begins the moment you stop tying your self-worth to reactions outside of you and start anchoring it in your own choices. An internal win looks quiet from the outside. There are no dramatic confrontations or public validations. Instead, there is relief that you no longer have to prove yourself, relief that you stopped chasing clarity from people who thrived on confusion, relief that your energy is no longer scattered trying to hold something together alone. This relief is powerful because it signals that you have chosen yourself without needing permission. The internal win also shows up as self-trust. Every time you honor your boundaries, you strengthen your relationship with yourself. You begin to trust that when something feels wrong, you will act. When you trust yourself, you no longer cling to situations out of fear. You know that even if something ends, you will be okay. That confidence cannot be given by another person. It must be built through consistent self-respect. Another aspect of the internal win is emotional regulation. Instead of reacting impulsively, you learn to pause. Instead of spiraling, you ground yourself. This doesn't mean you stop feeling deeply. It means your emotions no longer control your behavior. You can feel disappointment without chasing. You can feel loss without abandoning your dignity. That emotional maturity is a victory few people ever achieve. The real win is internal because it shifts your focus from being chosen to choosing. You stop asking, "Why wasn't I enough?" and start asking, "Is this enough for me?" That question changes everything. It recenters your power and reminds you that relationships are not auditions. They are mutual agreements built on effort, respect, and alignment. Internal wins also free you from resentment. When you stay too long in situations that don't serve you, resentment builds quietly. It turns into bitterness, self-blame, and emotional exhaustion. Choosing yourself early enough prevents that damage. You leave with clarity instead of anger, with acceptance instead of regret. That peace is worth more than any apology or explanation. Growth often requires letting go of the desire to be understood. Wanting someone to fully grasp your pain or acknowledge their mistakes is natural, but it can keep you stuck. The internal win comes when you realize that understanding is not required for closure. You can close a chapter simply because it no longer aligns with who you are becoming. When the win is internal, you stop measuring success by whether someone reaches out, misses you, or changes their mind. You measure it by how you feel when you wake up, by how calm your thoughts are, by how little you need external validation to feel steady. This inner stability becomes your foundation, influencing every future connection. The real win is internal because it lasts. Attention fades, circumstances change, people come and go, but the self-respect you build stays with you. It shapes your standards, your confidence, and your ability to love without losing yourself. And once you experience that kind of alignment, you never confuse external approval with true fulfillment again.